Okay, so if you're watching that last video, it got cut off at the end there, so I apologize. I was explaining how you can go in and put a color bar behind your text so it's easily readable over a busy background too. So what you're going to do is select both the white color bar or whatever color bar you put over this and the background at the same time by shift clicking them both and hitting arrange, send to back. All right, and you can see right away that you could totally read it, but it doesn't necessarily look that good. Of course, you could go up to the character palette and change what you want the type to look like, and give it a sort of a cool style with it that way. But there's other ways that you can make this look better as well, and that is by clicking on the color bar itself and maybe blurring it up a little bit or setting a little bit of transparency to it. So one way to do this is you can find under the window menu the transparency palette to bring that up front and center. There we go. And just setting that down to maybe like a 50 or 60% transparency. And it's just enough that it'll actually allow the text to be readable, but still allow some of that cool background pattern to show up there. And then if I want to make it a little bit softer, I can also select that and go up to Effect and choose Blur under Photoshop Effects, Gaussian Blur. And with that preview checkbox, if you hit OK, you can see it softens it up and it gives it a nice little touch as well. So you just kind of experiment with the settings you want on that, and you get some pretty cool effects. So I'm going to Alt drag that down here and also try to attempt to make that readable on a photographic background, and I want you to do the same. So challenge yourself. Again, don't go in and just try to set this to white, making it readable. Although on a photograph like this, even if I set it to white, I think it's probably going to be difficult to see. Yeah. So when you got varying contrasts, like this is a great example of that. It's not always easy to read, even by changing the color of the text itself. So you have to do different effects to make that readable. Now we're going to head over to Photoshop and do something similar. And so what you're going to do is open up Photoshop and do something similar. There's some different settings on this. And then as far as working with layers, it's a little bit different. You've probably forgotten a little bit of how to do that since it's been so long since you guys touched Photoshop. So you're going to go File, New. And you're also going to set up an 8.5 by 11 inch document. All right. It could be portrait orientation, just like the other one. You could set your resolution to 150 pixels per inch. Color mode should be set to RGB, but as long as it's 8.5 by 11 inches, 150 resolution, portrait orientation, it's fine. So I'm going to hit create. And you'll notice on this, let me close that out. Oh, wrong one. There we go, over here. There, okay. You'll see we have one background layer, and unlike Illustrator, when we add different artwork to this particular layer, it's not going to build new layers for us. Some things do, like text, but when we add our little color boxes like we did in Illustrator, we have to create a new layer manually each time we do this. So one thing we want to start off with is we're going to do something very similar, and that is we're going to pick a color. So I'm going to stick with the theme of using green in mine. And I'm going to set my rectangular marquee, which is a little different than the shape tool. This just makes a selection. And I'm going to hit new layer down here at the bottom of the layer palette. So it has its own layer. And you're welcome to name that. You can double click on it and call it shape 1 if you want. All right. At any rate, you're going to draw out a square. All right. And we want this square to be about 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Actually, let's go. I don't know if this is going to be too big, but we'll try 3 by 3, and we can always resize it. Another way to do this too is up here at the top, while you have rectangular marquee selected, is to go to fix size. Then we can put in exactly how big we want this to be. So 3 IN by 3 IN, which is inches. Now when I click, it's going to set it exactly to 3 inches. All right. And then when that's done, then we just have to fill that with pixels. So remember, in Photoshop, we're using pixels. In Illustrator, we use vector. So we're going to click on that shape layer. We've got the selection. We've got our color. Now we can just hit Alt Backspace to fill it. and then Control D to deselect. Okay. Next, we're going to go over and you could do this the easy way and just click on the Shape 1 layer and hit Control J 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And then go down to Shape 1 Copy, grab your Select tool and move this over. And then go to the next one, Shape 2, and drag over a copy. And go on to the next one and drag over. You can also have Auto Select. It doesn't really matter as long as you get these guys all dragged out. So we have 6 layers that have that green square, so that you can do that very quickly by copying a layer by doing Control J. Auto Select is fantastic while you have the Select tool selected for just quickly grabbing a layer. It will automatically select the layer for you. So I'm also going to drag through, and in order to do this, you have to have Auto Select selected, and it selects all these layers, and I can also use my arrow keys and move that into front and center. So just like Illustrator, I've created 6 areas that I could work with. And all that I got to do is now change the color of each of those squares. So my top right one, I'm going to select the Select tool, click on it. It's going to show me that it's Shape 1 Copy. And what I'm going to do is Control click the little layer thumbnail. What that'll do is it'll throw a selection around that, allowing me to isolate just that area so I can go in, double click, pick a darker shade of green and hit OK, and Alt backspace and fill that with a color. Then Control D to deselect. So I'm just going to continue to do that with my Select tool and click on the next square. That's going to show me it's Shape 1 Copy 4. I'm going to go ahead and Control click that layer and then pick whatever image I want to go in there. So now I need to go back out on the internet. So I'm going to go do some searching on the internet for some patterns, kind of like we did with the Illustrator one. So for the sake of time, though, I'm just going to open up what I already showed you guys, which is the pictures that I got and the patterns I got from the Illustrator one. But I want you guys to do different ones. I'll put this in the instructions. So I'm going to go to Downloads. I'm going to go to that pattern, hit Open. And I'm going to drag this over and drop it onto that particular file. And you can see here, the selection's still there. So all that I need to do while that selection is there is simply move my graphic around to where I want it to be. And if it's already in the same spot, it's perfect. And I just, while that's selected, just hit the mask button. Boop, and it's done. There's a mask thrown on it. And then I'm going to go close this one and File, open my other one, which is this pattern. And I'm going to drag that over and drop it in. All right. May have to do a little bit of resizing to this. This is fine. If you scale up a little bit, it's fine. But remember, keep in mind when you're using Photoshop, you are using pixels, so you do have to worry about resolution with this. So you never really want to scale up too much, but for our sake, in this being an exercise, it's fine. So to do this, I hit Control T for transform, and it brings around the bounding box to resize it. So I'm going to pull the corner up, holding Shift as I do so. Just big enough so it's as big as a square. Hit Enter to accept the changes. Move it over that. Now I just need to figure out which layer this is, which is sometimes it's a good idea to actually name things, but I'm just going to turn layers on and off until I find the right one. Okay, so I think it's this one, so I'm going to Control click that one. Oh, wrong one. I'm going to Control click that. There we go, that's the right one. You can continue to Control click these until you find the right one that you want. So you can see the marquees around that. So I'm going to go back on my image layer, which is layer 2, with that selection, and hit Mask at the bottom, and it cuts it out. Remember, Control Z is your friend, or Control Alt Z to undo mistakes. So if you do a mistake, you're like, oh crap, how do I go back? Control Alt Z and keep doing that until it fixes your mistake. So you're going to keep doing this, opening up your different files. Now I'm going to do my 2 photographs, and I can Control click them both and just open them simultaneously for time's sake. Drag those into my working file, put it in position, and I'm going to go in and Control click until I get to the right layer. If I could get that pop-up to stop popping up there. There we go. Okay, so there it is selected, and I'm just going to go in and select the image layer that it's on and hit Mask here. There we go. So I'm reaching the end of this, so I'll see you in the next